Hello and welcome to Monday Morning with Megan on the From Impossible to Inevitable podcast. Of course, I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. This is episode 191, and I have a great quote for you that goes right in line with what we were chatting about on Friday in episode 190. This quote is by Max Lucado. He's an author, and he said, "You weren't an accident. You weren't mass-produced. You aren't an assembly line product. You were deliberately planned, specifically gifted, and lovingly positioned on the earth by the Master Craftsman." Now, this is one of my core beliefs about all human beings on this earth. There are no accidental humans. There are no extra humans. We are all very intentionally created and continually, intentionally guided and sculpted through the experiences that we have in our lives that help us or encourage us, I guess, to step into who it is that we are meant to become. And I love this part where he says we are all specifically gifted. You were given your gifts specifically you and specifically those gifts, and you are in the place of life, in the place on the planet, in whatever place you are in that place, also specifically to make your own impact, whatever that is. You are innately born with a potential to fulfill, with a capacity to step into. You have this as a default already. This was already yours. Oh, totally already. The choice you have is in what you do with it, what you do with that gift, what you do with this knowledge that you weren't an accident, that you being here, wherever here is, both here physically and mentally and emotionally, you being there isn't an accident either. You listening to this podcast isn't an accident. Me sharing this quote with you isn't an accident. You hearing it is happening for a reason. I totally believe that. I totally believe that. As I have looked at people who have made huge impacts in my life, I'm like, man, what would I do if they didn't show up in the powerful way that they showed up? And what would I do if they didn't say what they said, if they didn't do what they did, if they didn't make their own impact? And of course, I'm thinking about people who are famous as well as people who are just personally in my life, family and friends, and that have made a true difference in my life. So it's not about fame. It's not about, huge numbers, unless that's part of your plan, unless that's part of your divine trajectory, whatever, then that's great. I love that for you. But it's not always about large numbers. Most of the time, it's just about the individual that you can have that impact on. But you weren't an accident. They weren't an accident. You being in the same sphere where you can make that impact also wasn't an accident. But in order for you to make the impact, you have to be who it is you were meant to be. You have to step into that version. You have to overcome the fear, overcome the doubt, overcome the whatever that's getting in your way, that's keeping you from fulfilling the capacity that you were given to fulfill. Because you have a mission, you have a purpose, you have a potential 100%, and it is your responsibility to fulfill that. It is your responsibility to figure it out, whatever that means, get whatever help you need to get as far as figuring that out, because there are endless books and courses and podcasts and all of the things out there that can help you figure it out. And I would invite you on that note to really go into your journal and spend some time with your own inner wisdom to figure it out, because honestly, you have all the answers. And I hated that quote forever. I'm like, I don't know what the crap you're talking about. I have all the answers. I'm freaking clueless. But the more I work in my journal, the more I realize that I have more answers than I realized. I have more answers than I knew that I had. And you do too. You do too. Okay, as you go throughout this week, remember you weren't an accident. You were specifically here, specifically gifted, intentionally designed, intentionally placed. Nothing about it was an accident. And you get to choose what to do from here. I totally love you. I hope you have a great week. Bye for now.